Let's look at factoring by grouping, where our expression has a greatest common factor overall. So from now on, you want to make sure that you're always checking for a greatest common factor other than 1. I want to factor negative 5x squared minus 35x minus 60. The first thing I'm going to look for is for a greatest common factor other than 1 between all 3 terms. So I'm looking for the greatest common factor between negative 5x squared, negative 35x, and negative 60. The greatest common factor between all 3 of these terms is equal to negative 5, because only 2 of my terms have an x, so they're not going to have any x's in common, and all 3 are negative, so my greatest common factor will be negative, and then the factor that goes into all 3 of my numbers, so between 5, 35, and 60, is 5. And that's the greatest factor out of all the possible factors. So then I'll factor out that negative 5. So I have negative 5 times, well, negative 5x squared divided by negative 5 is x squared. Negative 35x divided by negative 5 will give me a plus 7x. And then negative 60 divided by negative 5 will give me a plus 12. Once you've factored out the greatest common factor, we can then factor normally, generally using the grouping method. So first we'll want to identify our a, which is 1, our b, which is 7, and our c, which is 12, and then we'll want to split our b term. So that means that we need to find a number that adds to b, which is 7, and since a is equal to 1, that multiplies to c, which is 12. So I'll start by listing the factors of 12, so that could be 1 and 12, 2 and 6, or 3 and 4. I could also look at the negative pairs, but since I'm trying to add to a positive number, I'm not too worried about that. The pair of factors that multiply to 12 and add to 7 are 3 and 4. So these are the coefficients I'll use to split my b term. So I have negative 5, be very careful not to lose that negative 5, times, extra parenthesis, x squared plus 3x plus 4x, splitting my b term 7x, plus 12. And then I can make this have 2 groups, so I have negative 5 times the quantity of my first group is that x squared plus 3x, and my second group is that 4x plus 12. Then I can factor the greatest common factor from each of my groups. So I have negative 5 times x times the quantity of x plus 3, plus 4 times the quantity of x plus 3. And then each of my groups has this x plus 3. So this is equal to negative 5 times that x plus 3, which I factored out. And when I factor that out, I'm left with this x plus 4. So the factored form of my expression is negative 5 times the quantity of x plus 3 times the quantity of x plus 4. And that new step that we've added is factoring out that greatest common factor other than 1. So when factoring, what should you always check for first? You should always check for a greatest common factor other than 1. So now let's factor the expression 3x cubed plus 36x squared plus 60x. The first thing we'll check for is for a greatest common factor between our three terms. So we're looking for the greatest common factor of 3x cubed, 36x squared, and 60x. The greatest common factor of these three terms is equal to, well, all three of them have at least one x, so that we know that we'll include an x, and then the greatest common factor between our coefficients, so between 3, 36, and 60, is 3. So we have to factor out a 3x. So we have 3x times, well, 3x cubed divided by 3x leaves us with x squared, plus 36x squared divided by 3x leaves us with 12x, and 60x divided by 3x leaves us with 20. Now that we've factored out the greatest common factor, we can factor normally. So we'll find each of our a, b's, and c's. So a is equal to 1, b is equal to 12, and c is equal to 20. And now we'll need to split our b term. So we need to find a pair of factors that add to b, which is 12, and since a is 1, that means that we need to have them multiply to 20. We'll start by listing the factors of 20. So we could have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, or 4 and 5. And we need to choose the pair that adds to 12, which is 2 and 10. So now we can split our b term, being careful to rewrite our greatest common factor on that outside. We have 3x times x squared plus 2x plus 10x plus 20. And we can now group this. So we have 3x times, I'm going to change these to brackets so it's a little easier to tell my different parentheses apart. So I have 3x times the quantity x squared plus 2x plus the quantity 10x plus 20. And I'll factor the greatest common factor from each group. So I have 3x times the greatest common factor between x squared and 2x is x. So I have x times x plus 2, plus the greatest common factor between 10x and 20 is 10. So plus 10 times the quantity x plus 2. Each of these groups has this x plus 2 in common, so I can factor out that x plus 2 as well. So this is equal to 3x times my x plus 2 times what's left when I factor out my x plus 2, which is my x and my plus 10. So the final factored form of the expression 3x cubed plus 36x squared plus 60x is equal to 3x times the quantity x plus 2 times the quantity x plus 10.